Hey guys, Kevin here. A little change of plans with the podcast for this week after initially recording. First and foremost, Eric and I want to wish Damar Hamlin a quick, speedy, and full recovery. Damar's health is in all of our thoughts and prayers, and if you haven't seen already, I'd check out the prayer that Dan Orlowski said today on the show, which would be Tuesday on ESPN, as I feel it helped gather kind of what all of us have been thinking and praying all along. As you'll hear during the pod, we recorded this week's episode during the Bills-Bengals game. In light of what happened, Eric and I have decided to cut the Bills preview portion from this week's episode for now until there's more clarity on the situation for next Sunday. Also in the show notes, if you haven't seen already, I've included the link to the GoFundMe charity that Damar Hamlin runs for a toy drive, and I'd check that out if you can. There's been plenty of donations coming in, and I'd like to see that number go up. With all that said, thank you guys for listening each week, and then now on to the podcast.
Thank you, and welcome back to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kevin. Welcome back for our 51st episode this week after a week-long hiatus, where we'll be recapping the Patriots' win versus the Miami Dolphins and previewing the upcoming game versus the Buffalo Bills. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats300LevelPod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day, as well as at our website at Pats300LevelPod.com. So, Kevin, for the Patriots, wasn't the prettiest of outcomes, wasn't the prettiest of games, but they ended up with a much needed win, winning 23-21 in a must-win game. What was your just overall thoughts?
Yeah, I think the overall thoughts would be that this game kind of encompasses the whole kind of Patriots season, where a lot of things have gone right for them to get the wins that they have. And you look at all of their wins so far this year, only one of them is against the starting quarterback. And I don't count Zach Wilson as the starting quarterback. So everyone else is a backup quarterback. And the only quarterback you beat was Jared Goff, who neither of us think really is anything special.
Yep.
And they had to get a defensive score to help change the game over. And that's been 4 weeks in a row with a defensive score. And the other thing is that they needed the third string quarterback to basically come in and lose them the game. So I don't think this is a great win where you could say, hey, they did everything they did everything right and it was a perfect win. They did what they needed to do, and they got out of there with a win, and the defense looked good against a backup quarterback, which they have this year. But there were a lot of things with the offense that still don't look right, and I think that's really the big takeaway, where this team is how lucky have they been that they faced the quarterbacks they have. And again, every team does, but I feel like it could be a different season if you had kind of different quarterback play.
No, I think that's fair. I thought just my overall thoughts of the game was it wasn't pretty, but a win's a win. It was against a divisional opponent that has had your record pretty much the last few years. I know previous years they had Flores as the coach. Now they have McDaniel, but it was a team that dominated you, especially from their defensive perspective, week one. And the Patriots needed a defensive score to help change the pretty much the play of the game. But I thought the biggest takeaway was, yes, they were playing against a backup quarterback, but Bridgewater is one of the better backup quarterbacks, and he was a starter for several years. And the Patriots held Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to just 107 yards combined, while missing 3 of their 4 starting cornerbacks. So for me, that was my biggest takeaway. Was going into the game, we knew that Jack Jones was on IR. We knew Marcus Jones was going to be missed because of concussion. Then seeing Jalen Mills out as well, I was worried how this defense was going to cover them. Because yes, you still have Jonathan Jones, but say you put him on Tyreek Hill, which he has historically covered well, you're going to have Marcus or Bryant on Jalen Waddles or the 2 practice squad guys. So I thought overall, considering everything, the Patriots ended up playing well, a lot better on defense than I was expecting. And then the offense still wasn't great. I still think a lot of it's coaching, but they did enough and what they needed to do to win.
Yep. So now I think really the biggest kind of thing that we want to talk about would just be the defense, because we've seen how they play this year, and we've kind of really gotten a tale of two defenses this year, where against like these backup quarterbacks, they look like the number one defense in the league. They create turnovers, they have scores. And then when you face the better quarterbacks in the league, like Burrow and Allen and even Lamar Jackson, where the jury's still out on him, but
Yeah.
really any of the better quarterbacks, they don't get the stops that are needed all the time.
I don't know if that's actually fair to say against the quarterbacks that are mobile and can run, such as Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields. Yes, but even against Burrow, granted they were horrendous the
Burrow,
first.
the Bengals threw away the game at the end. That was
no, they did, but in the second half they played a lot better. Granted, there were a few times where Burrow or the Bengals dropped the ball or slightly overthrown, but when they needed to, they did get stops.
But still, this is the way that they looked beforehand. It wasn't like they've looked against these teams. So anyway, I think one of the things, kind of the biggest questions I really had, not even against the Patriots on this, would just be the Dolphins when watching this. The Patriots were down to basically one cornerback because Miles Bryant isn't really a great. He's okay in the slot.
Yeah.
He's short. He's not that fast. But you have Waddle, you have Hill, are your two big burners, and Jonathan Jones can only cover one guy. So I don't know why they didn't spread them out more. They kept running like two receiver sets with a tight end and multiple running backs, and they kept running the ball. And the biggest strength that you had against the Patriots would be spreading them out, exposing their practice squad corners, and kind of do what the Bills did last year in the playoffs when you had the same sort of situation arise itself. So that was really my biggest kind of question mark coming into this, is like, why didn't they pass it more? Why didn't they spread them out more? I feel like that was a key.
I wonder
they could have.
Part of it
was the pass
both
rush.
their tackles were out, and I think they were down to third string tackle. I forget left or right tackle, but I wonder if that was part of it, where they didn't think if they spread it out, they'd have enough time due to the Patriots pass rush. But I don't know why they didn't at least attempt it a few times. I know that Barmore had a big day, and we'll get to that in a second. But Judon overall, even against backup tackles, didn't do great. I know he wasn't always rushing the whole time, but for a team that historically has pass rush very, very well this year, they didn't really get a ton of pressure until towards the end of the game.
Yeah, that's really fair too. So that was another thing I was thinking about putting in the downs, is that just the amount of pressure they got, it wasn't really consistent until the end. But I think overall the defense did a really good job with what they had, and kind of containing them to the point. Anything you want to really go over on that at all?
No, I just thought overall they did pretty well. Tyreek Hill, 4 catches, 55 yards. Jalen Waddle, 3 catches, 52 yards. And those are two receivers that I believe had over 1,300 yards each going into this game. And then Jonathan Jones had an outstanding game. I know he's been inconsistent. He had a really good first half of the season, hasn't been great the second half, but historically has covered Tyreek Hill very well, and he did the same again this week. I believe he only allowed 1 catch for 4 yards when specifically covering Hill. I thought overall the defense has shown that it's been pretty good this year, and I think that's one thing that Steve Belichick doesn't get a lot of credit. I know a lot of people attack him when they don't play well, but I feel that this defense has played a lot better this year than we've been expecting. And I think some credit does go to him. Granted, we still don't know how much of it is Steve, how much it is Mayo, how much of it is Bill, but overall, I thought they did a good job.
Yep. And then the next thing, Mac Jones in the game. We usually talk about him every week. I think this is really kind of a tale of, I'd say, kind of like 3 kind of parts to him, where he started off the game really well. The offense overall looked real, like it was kind of flowing a little bit. It seemed like they had some good plays drawn up, and then they just hit that snag that we know, where they go 3 and out, or they have penalties. Trent Brown had another false start, which is I think his 4th in a row, like every week, or he's had
I think he has
amount.
9 or 10 total on the year, which is insane.
And they just kept shooting themselves in the foot, and they kept having that 3 and out, and they just didn't look right. And then the last third, they actually started playing well again, and Mac was able to hit some big throws. So I think it was kind of inconsistent, I would say. And again, I didn't get to watch really in the film to see there was that week where everyone was saying, "Oh, Mac was horrible. It was his worst career start a few weeks ago," and it was really bad. But then it turns out some of those bad passes were just really bad routes. So I'm
Yeah.
interested in seeing what happens with that. But again, so I feel a little bit more confident saying those are just bad passes in these situations, but it'd be interesting to see. But I think he had an okay game. I'd say probably if you had to grade it, what would you give him? I would say maybe like a B minus, C
Yeah,
plus.
that's exactly what I was thinking. B minus. Wasn't
Mhm.
perfect, did enough, but also I was going to get to it in a second, but I'll just bring it up now. The coaching again
Mhm.
and play calling was just I don't understand it.
Mhm.
The like one instance that comes to mind was 2nd and 18. You have Stevenson run 17 yards, and it's 3rd and 1. What do? Throw it deep.
Yep.
You
It's
have
like
3rd and
we
12.
tweeted out once. There was like third and short and
Yep.
a play call for Madden where it's the verticals and everyone. It's the exact same thing they do. And then you
Yeah.
have I'm assuming you can go. I think I know what the next thing you're
Yeah,
gonna
I was going
say.
to say it's 3rd and 12, and they have everyone doing no one near the sticks, either people going deep or just everyone well short of the line. And it really seems like, at least this season, especially as the season goes on, that just someone that plays Madden could be a better play caller in certain instances than Patricia. I know that's not fair. There's a lot of
Mhm.
intricacies that go into it, but it's just some things. It's just common sense. Like, yes, if you think that it's something like a specific instance where defense might not be expecting it, okay, that's one thing. But
Mhm.
historically, week after week, it's the same things. 3rd and short, everyone's going deep, and there's no one short. 3rd and long, everyone's short. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yep, I completely agree. It's the most baffling thing just to see week after week after week where we're just two nerd football fans that play a lot of Madden, watch a ton of football, and really have I feel like we have a decent grasp on offense and defense.
Yeah.
Um, but you would think someone of Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, who've had more years, and then that's their
Both were
whole
head
job.
coaches for
Both
multiple
head
years.
coaches. Their whole life is basically that. I'm not sitting down at night to be kind of drawing up different plays or anything like that, and then watching a ton of film. And you even watch the college football playoffs this past weekend, and I would take any of those coordinators over Matt right now because it
Yeah.
seems like they at least have things dialed up the right way and have an
Bill
understanding what
O'Brien.
to run. Especially Bill O'Brien for what he
Yeah.
did this past weekend, but it's just night and day just watching just really any offense compared to this. Maybe
Yeah.
not the Commanders or the sometimes the Lions, sometimes the
Yeah.
Jets. But it's just baffling that I never expect, and I think we said this last pod, but I
Yeah.
never expected it to get this bad. And I'm just it's insane. It's just the same thing over and over again. Um, but I would like to think it gets fixed at some point, but it's week 17. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen. So it would just have to wait till next year. But
And then it's just not just Patricia for the specific play calling, but just
mhm,
all the overall offensive coaching in general, where
mhm,
you have receivers not running the right routes or running bad routes, where
mhm,
you have the offensive line not doing great when Patricia's the offensive line coach.
mhm,
The only thing that's really been good has been the running attack, even after losing Ivan Fears. But
mhm,
other than that, it's just players. Just I think a lot of it comes down to coaching, and it's something that's going to have to be entirely. I don't know about revamped is the right word, but
mhm.
you're going to have to address it in this offseason.
Oh yeah, completely. You're going to the play calling. You're going to need a real quarterbacks coach, I would say. Um, Offensive line, where if Matt Patricia was only focused on offensive line, I think he might be able to be a good coach. That's where he started off. So he's
Yeah,
had some background in it. But you need a real quarterbacks coach. You need to get rid of Cam McCord and then put Joe Judge in special teams.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Uh,
special
you
teams
need
coaching is.
you need a real offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
You may need a wide receivers coach because that's the thing. Like you were saying, the bad routes is that Troy Brown just not. Maybe he's just not a good coach. He's an excellent wide receiver. Maybe he just can't coach it, or
yeah.
maybe it's coming from the top down, and there's only so much he can do. Based on that. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen this offseason.
Yeah.
Um,
There was one thing I tweeted out a question for, I think, Zach Cox or Evan Lazar or something. Then someone commented on it with a actual interesting scenario that I kind of like, where bring in Bill O'Brien as your offensive coordinator and then bring in Charlie Weiss Jr. as your quarterback coach. And then when O'Brien leaves, you groom him to become your offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so really that was something I think even a few pods ago when we were getting just potential ones. I thought that would be a good one, where you need to have either O'Brien pick a quarterback's coach that he cannot poach when he leaves, or pick your own that you think that he'll be a good offensive coordinator in 1 to 3 years. So
I think if O'Brien comes, it has to be for minimum 2 years, because if not, Mac will have his fourth coordinator in 4 years. But
but yeah, they have to run like the same sort of like the playbook, something similar. You can't go to an air raid offense next year. It needs to be some sort of merriment of the two, or one or the other. But it can't just be something completely out of left field. Now that we've been kind of rambling, the offensive line and running attack, you can kind of combine them in one. I don't really have much on the offensive line, other than just the Trent Brown penalty. And then McDermott got murdered on one of the plays, but one
who did on one too, the one where it was the 3rd and 10 or something, where it was the last play of the offensive play of the game, which I also didn't understand that play call either. I don't. Granted, I think they should have kicked the field goal when it would have brought them up, but besides the point.
Again, on that play call, you had everyone, I think, running verticals on that too, right? On 4th and 4,
and it was a bootleg.
It was a bootleg, and I don't think they either had it blocked right, or I just don't know what the whole plan was with that.
Because I know when you got blown up, but I feel like that was probably because the wrong play call. More often than not, when you is your best player outside of Stevenson on offense.
But the running attack, the yards per carry for Stevenson, he didn't have too many carries compared to what he's been getting, but it's because Harris was back, and I really like that Harris is back now, just because you could tell that Stevens is starting to get wear and tear. I'm thinking his drops and his kind of fumbles are just because he's kind of getting worn down. And I'm hoping that's the case, because he's kind of got a case of drops lately. He's been dropping a ton of passes. He's been having those fumbles going back a few weeks. And I'm just hoping with Harris back, Harris is a very good compliment to running with him. I'm hoping it's going to just kind of shore that up and make the running attack even better than it is, not having to rely completely on Stevenson.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. One thing I actually did like, just last thing to talk about, was I liked how there were some plays where they had both Pierce Strong and Stevenson in the backfield, both in passing situations where that can create mismatches. And Pierce Strong has shown, he's been inconsistent, but lately he's shown that he can be a pretty decent pass catcher out of the backfield. So that could just add another dynamic to this offense, which is pretty stagnant to begin with. But
all right, going on to 3 up, 3 down. I think we had kind of similar ones here, so I'll go and just say my first 3, and then I'll let you comment right afterwards. Kyle Duggar, Peppers, and Barmore. Duggar, again, had that really good interception. I'm thinking of kind of breaking that down on film once that the all 22 comes out, because it was a really good kind of play call by Steve there. Peppers was just every single time he plays more and more, he just lights someone up a ton. And I think they really would want to re-sign him for next year, because I think he's just kind of really coming into it now, and I really would love to see him in a full season with them. And then Barmore, this is his best game of the year, I'd say by far. And he really he had that one run stuff where he just blew up one of the, I think, the guards or the centers, and he had a bunch of pressures, 7 pressures, 1 sack, but he was excellent in this game.
No, I agree with you. I had all 3 as my 3 up 2 in that same order. Duggar he's just getting better and better each week. That interception was, again, a great read by him, with also a good run to the end zone for a touchdown. And he's someone that this offseason, he's eligible for a contract extension. You're going to have to sign him long term. he's one of your best players on defense, especially if McCourty retires at the end of the year, which there's some implications that might be the case. You're going to need him for the years to come to carry this defense. Peppers, again, number 2. He was all over the field, having big impact hits. And he's someone that, like you said, he's been coming into his own in recent weeks, where he's someone that fits this defense and Bill Belichick's scheme perfectly, where he's versatile. He can play all over the field. He can play safety. He can play linebacker. He can play slot corner at times. So he's someone that it seems like he's getting his footing, and you're seeing the impact that he's had in these last few weeks. And hopefully he only signed a 1-year contract in the offseason. Hopefully he's someone that they also extend this season as well, like you said. And then Barmore, this was more his coming out game this year, where I know before he got hurt, he wasn't really showing. He was still good, but didn't have the same impact that he did last year. And then a couple of weeks ago, he was pretty good. And then I think this was by far his best game this year, and one of the best games of his young career so far. Like you said, 7 pressures and a sack. And you saw at times the sack that he got was actually due to the pressure on the outside from Judon on one side and Uche on the other, and him coming up the middle since the pocket collapsed on him. And that's something where if the Patriots want to have success, if they want to beat Buffalo, and if they want to have some success in the playoffs, they're going to need a very efficient pass rush. And by having Barmore back, and then having both Judon and Uche on the outside with Barmore and Wise coming up the middle, that's a way of success. So that's something they're going to need to rely on, this front 4 or front 4 and front 7 and pass rush if they want to win any more games this year.
Yep. Going on 3 down. So I've got Pilar. I'm not sure who you fill in, but I've got Pilardi.
I have the same as you, Pilardi.
All right, Schooler, and then the offense. The punter situation, I don't think it could get any worse than this.
Yeah.
He was horrible, absolutely horrible. And I know Jake Bailey had a really rough year this year. I'm taking injured Jake Bailey over this right now. He's god awful. Schooler, he had that really bad. What do you have? Was it roughing I just remember him
running into the punter.
Running into the punter.
On 4th and 6.
Extending that whole drive. And then the offense overall, like I said, I was gonna put Mac, but then I'm still like questioning whether it's Mac. Was it the play calling was horrible anyway. And Mac did have some good stretches. So I would say offense altogether, just because I didn't want to give only just one person that.
No, I'd say Pilardi for me was one where with Jake Bailey, he has had a very bad season, but usually it would be he'd have 3 really good punts and then a shank 7-yard punt or something like that. Where Pilardi this week, I think his first 3 punts were less than 40 yards. And then when he had, I think, 58 yards to punt it, he punts it right into the end zone for a 60-yard punt. So you couldn't have had a worse overall performance from a punter, and hopefully they get Bailey back and he's at least decent. Hopefully he somehow returns to his all-pro season, but if not, even if what he's done last year and this year is better than what Pilardi was giving you. Number 2 is Schooler, where in that you have to have situational awareness. I know he came close to blocking the punt, but you have to know the situation where they were going to go for it. The Dolphins were going to go for it on 4th down. Then there was a penalty which pushed him back. And then since he had another penalty, it brought him to 4th and 1 where they went for it. They got it. And then they ended up getting the first touchdown. Because of that, you just have to have better situational awareness, especially if you're just a situational player on special teams. And then number 3 was for me, it was more the offensive play calling instead of the offense itself, just like we mentioned earlier. And then honorable mention was Kendrick Bourne, where throughout the season, outside of last week, we've been wondering where is he, but when he goes into the game, he just always seems to make a mistake, which I don't know if this is just lack of confidence because he's not getting the reps in games, but it seems when he's on the field, one of 4 things is going to happen. He's either going to have a fumble or have a penalty, have a drop, have a fumble, or get a big first down or touchdown. It's pretty much one of those 4 without fail. And this year, at least, granted, because he's not playing as much, it's usually one of the 3 negatives. So when he comes into the game, it sucks because he had a really good game the previous week.
Mhm.
But I wonder if part of the reason why he's not playing is because of all these errors that we're seeing when he is in the game.
Oh yeah, completely agree. We were texting, and you're like, "Oh, it's a 25% chance he makes a play, 25% chance of penalty,
Yeah,
and then 25% chance he does something wrong." So,
that's only
um,
75%.
whatever,
Yeah,
33.3. So, anyway, moving on. News around the NFL. I think the first thing we're gonna mention the Bills one, but you can clearly tell I've been distracted tonight.
yeah,
Just checking on updates. Both of us want to just pray for the health of Damar Hamlin. Just crazy scene with the at the Bills game, and trying to see if any updates on there, but nothing yet. But
yeah. It happened right before we were about to film, and so we're filming now. The game's been suspended, obviously, but we obviously don't know. So that's just
yeah, and the
pray
fact that
for it.
Goodell hasn't at least postponed this game already is insane. Like, I can't imagine going into your own work, and
Yeah,
no matter where you work, if you work in a pharmacy or an office or what have you, and a coworker collapses and needs CPR, um, would any of them tell you to go back to work that same day and just say, "Oh, give 5 minutes, everyone," and then
yeah.
just go back to your jobs? That would never happen.
And I
Um,
think the only reason why the game was suspended was because McDermott and Taylor both said we're not going to play, and then the
yeah,
NFL's hand was forced. But you could tell the NFL didn't care; they just cared about the money and they wanted the game to be played. But
hmm
there are things that are more important than the game.
hmm So just praying for him. We don't really have too many updates here. He was taken out in the ambulance. Just praying for him and his family, and hopefully it's nothing too serious. But we'll have to see. All right, Jarrett Stidham. Moving on to something a little bit more happier. This is going to bring the Stidhanons back on into play, where Stidham had an insane game against the 49ers. Again, although he did have his interceptions that he's known for,
Yeah,
but he did have more touchdowns than interceptions, which wasn't the case coming into this game, where he actually had more interceptions than touchdowns. What do you think that really means? Really, just for Stidham and for the Raiders and Carr. Do you think it's more of an aberration where Carr is just really bad, or do you think Stidham's really good and somewhere in between?
I think it's somewhere in between because last year we saw Carr had 5,000 yards passing.
Mhm.
I think 2017 or 2016 he was one of the front runners to be MVP until he got hurt. So like we've seen the potential. I think it's just the change in offensive system to McDaniels. Plus, also, I don't think he's very good, but I think he's an average quarterback. But when given good surrounding pieces, he can be good outside of this year. I still don't think. I really liked Stidham when he was here. I wish he had an opportunity to play and to start. I know when he was in there, he was inconsistent, but he also seemed way too happy in 2020
Mhm.
to just be a backup, and it didn't really seem like he wanted to grab the reins by the horn when he was projected to be the starter. Last year, he seemed also happy to be inactive every week and being the backup the third string quarterback. So
Mhm.
I wish him success, but also even though he had such a great game, once the game went after Robbie Gold missed the field goal for the game to go into overtime, I texted you saying, "Now let's hope the real city comes to play in overtime." And boy, did he with that horrendous
Yeah.
interception.
What a just that was a prototypical pass that we thought we would see from him. So
Yeah,
just throw it up
surprised it took
there.
that long, but
Yeah.
I thought overall he had a really good game, and it shows that the Raiders offense can be productive as they scored 34 points against the best defense in the NFL in the 49ers. And it makes me worried as a Patriots fan to wonder what that offense is going to be like with Tom Brady at the helm next year. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I think kind of the same thing with you. I think it kind of shows what happens when you have a quarterback that knows the system and understands really the ins and outs of it, because he's had
this is his
3 years.
fourth year.
This is fourth year in the system. So he's had 3 years before this to really understand it and grasp it. And then I think he shows that he belongs in league, not as a starter, but I would say as a backup quarterback, and kind of held his own, and also had the interceptions, which you know he's going to get from him. But the crazy thing with him is that if the game was played in shorts and it was flag football,
Yep.
he'd probably be a top 5, top 10 quarterback. Just because he's got all the intangibles. He's not not all of them.
He
because
doesn't. He has all the physical
he has
tools.
all the physical traits
He
that
does
you
not
need.
have the
He
intangibles.
doesn't have the intangibles. He has no intangibles. He has all the physical tools that you need to be a quarterback. He's got a great arm. He throws with precision. He's accurate. He can move a little bit. It's just in between the head sometimes when he gets pressure, he just doesn't look like the same person. So, but he did have a couple good throws when he took some hits, which I was surprised at. But interesting to see what happens with that. All right, let's move on. College football playoffs. We're not really going to talk too much about it. But it was a great I'm not sure if you didn't really get to see him because you were traveling. But
no, I didn't get to see the 2 playoff games because I was flying and having a lot of flight issues on New Year's Eve, but glad to see TCU win, and then a great game. Or the TCU game was great, and then the Georgia Ohio State game was great as well. Granted, non-calls and certain calls kind of marred both games, but overall I thought it was just seeing the highlights and everything, just a great weekend of football. And even just all the overall bowl games, a lot of them have been very close.
Yeah, it was an awesome night. Didn't even have to watch any of the ball drop stuff because of 2 great games that were on. So I just really enjoyed it. I think college football overall, the whole not only the playoffs but just all the bowl games have all had kind of some great storylines, and we're all really exciting to watch so far. And even today, we're taping on the 2nd on Monday. But the Mississippi State game honoring Mike Leach with those awesome helmets with the pirate flag, and then ended up covering at the end by that lateral play, kind of like the Patriots. But kind of awesome.
The opposing team was actually down.
Yeah, they were down.
They needed to lateral.
Yeah, so. Next one, Ron Rivera, not knowing that his team could be eliminated that day it was just really, it just kind of really shows. I don't know if he really has it anymore, where you see where a game passes a coach by, and the team has never been, well, the one problem is they've never had a real good quarterback, so it's really tough to say. Where he had them in the playoffs last year, but with a losing record. I don't really know, but it's just kind of baffling that he didn't know all the scenarios off the top of his head, where you would know, where Bill only talks about the next game, but the back of his head, he knows exactly what he needs in order to get there. Even there was the game against Miami years ago, where they ended up losing the Castle game, where they ended up losing the game because they wanted to face the Bengals instead of I don't remember who the other, or they wanted to face was it the Jaguars instead of the Bengals?
I think so.
It might have been they wanted to face the Jaguars instead of the Bengals. But he knew all the different permutations, had Castle throw the ball into the stands. So it just kind of shocking that you just didn't know.
And it kind of just shows how, I know a lot of fans are saying you need to move on from Bill, but if you look at, I'd say there's 32 head coaches in the NFL. If you had 25 of the other coaches coaching this team, this team would look horrendous, and it wouldn't be where it is today. And it just makes the grass isn't always greener on the other side, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And with having Bill, who's one of the best coaches of the NFL, I think a lot of times we take that for granted.
All right, moving on to the Bills game.
One more thing just before we move on is just
I missed that. Yeah, the Patriots path to playoffs. I'll let you.
So a lot of things went the Patriots' way this weekend. Where if they beat the Bills on Sunday, regardless, they advance to the playoffs. However, if they lose, they can still make the playoffs if the Jets beat the Dolphins, which it's seeming like Tua is not going to play on Sunday. So it's either going to be Teddy Bridgewater or their third string quarterback, Thompson. They need the Jaguars to beat the Titans, which the Titans are starting Josh Dobbs, and I believe they've lost 6 straight. And the Jaguars have seemed like they're one of the better teams in the NFL the last 6-7 weeks. So The Jaguars one seems pretty likely, although they are going up against Vrabel, who is one of the better coaches. The Jets at least seems realistic, even though they don't have anything to play for. And then the Steelers, they have to lose to the Browns, which if they lost to the Ravens last night, you wouldn't have to even worry about that. So that one seems like the least likely, but the Browns do have Deshaun Watson back. They have talent, but they're not really coached great. So um, the Browns Steelers game and then the Dolphins Jets games are both Sunday at 1, which is the same time as the Patriots. The Jaguars Titans is Saturday night. So the Jaguars game, if they lose, you at least know going into the game the Patriots need to win. If they win, then it's still alive that they can make it with losing, but it's going to depend on you can't assume that all those scenarios are going to happen, but so the easiest way is just to win out, obviously, but you are going up against a Bills team that has pretty much manhandled you 5 of the last 6 times you played them.
Yep. So easy thing, win and get in. And we don't have to even worry about any of that stuff. So
yep.
Will be interesting to really see what happens. I think one of the interesting kind of storylines too was just that path was that the NFL having the Chiefs play on Saturday night, where you would think they'd want all of the kind of scenarios that would have to happen all kind of line up in the same time slot. That way the Bills would know going into the game basically what they need to do, where
yep.
if and who even knows what's going to happen now with this game, but let's say and this could actually kind of change everything, but let's say they would it seems like they're postponing the game. All the gear's been kind of hold off.
It's been announced that it's postponed. I don't know if they're going to end up replaying it or just
yes. I don't know if it's going to go to like tomorrow or if it's going to be like just 2 weeks from now, if it's canceled.
But I don't think it'll be 2 weeks because that's when playoffs start.
They could always change that, but yeah, who knows what's going to happen. So, but let's say assume there's going to be a game somehow called for this, but the Bills would know going into the game what they need to do is really the big thing I was getting at, where usually they would want to have all the suspense happen at once, but it did work out in the Patriots' favor for that, at least. And I think that's really all I had. Anything else on the path, or do you want to go right into the Bills?
No, just the only thing is it depends on if they're gonna going into the game. The Bills could rest their starters if they know they have the 1 seed or they know they're not going to get the bye. But also McDermott absolutely hates Bill. So even if they knew that, I wonder if he would even bench him because he doesn't want the Patriots to win, or maybe even after what happened tonight, maybe he does rest him where happened to someone. So we'll have to wait and see, but you just have to go into the game assuming you're playing all their starters, and you're just gonna have to play your best game of the season if you want to win and make the playoffs.
And then the way that Bill's always been is you can't rely on anyone else, so you can rely on yourself. So easy way in and you're in. You don't want to go into the playoffs backing in anyway. So
and if they don't beat the Bills, honestly, they don't really deserve to make the playoffs, where you're 0-6 versus teams that have over a 500 record. You have 1 win versus a quarterback that's a starter, which is Zach Wilson, which I don't know if that even counts. So pretty much you don't even really, or not Zach Wilson, Jared Goff, but Jared Goff sucks.
Yeah. So that doesn't even really count. So that's the big thing, where if you can't beat them here, how are you going to beat them in the playoffs? What are you really hoping for? Where likely there's a good chance where even if you were to get in, you're probably going to be playing them in
probably the Chiefs. League. As of now, the Chiefs, if you beat them, then it would be them or the Bengals. But
it's them, Chiefs, or the Bengals. Where realistically, I would actually rather face the Chiefs or the Bengals, because the Chiefs, you can somehow slow down. You can get to Mahomes. You know how to slow down Mahomes a little bit. It is different where they don't have Hill now, so it's a little bit different. A different way to slow him down. But they have all those safeties, and they can slow down Kelsey that way. So, what was I saying? And then the Bengals, you almost came back and won, but that might have been a fluke though too. And they've got a ton of weapons, and with all your corners down, I feel like they'd be smarter and spread you out and really kill you that way. But I don't know. It's just if you can't beat the Bills, what are you doing? So you're not going to be. you're not going to be having some sort of Cinderella story if you're limping into the playoffs. I don't think.
Yep.
All right. So again, like to just say again, just because we've been kind of not really fully paying attention on this one, just thoughts and prayers again for Damar Hamlin. Hopefully everything ends up turning out all right. The game has been officially postponed. They haven't said anything much about that. He is intubated in critical condition. So again, thoughts and prayers to him and his family and the Bills. And it's insane. It took the NFL over an hour to actually to actually postpone the game. And they would have never even done it if it wasn't for the two coaches getting together and basically forcing their hand. So it's just crazy that this is the whole situation. So again, thoughts and prayers to them. And then for us, subscribe, rate, and review. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pat's 3 Pod. And then eventually we'll get some blogs up. I think I might do one if I get some time, if the old 22 comes up in time. I do want to break down that Duggar one just because it's really interesting to watch. So, all right, talk to you guys next week, and we'll see what happens in the upcoming kind of playoff scenarios.
Yeah.